A very good morning. It's just past 8 by the clock. We are back again with another edition of Breakfast News this Tuesday morning. Over the next 60 minutes, this is your one-stop show for all that matters from the field of politics, business, sports, entertainment. Also, your daily dose of health tip and a look at weather. Well, I'm Anil Thomas. With me to take you through the next 60 minutes is Rukma. Good morning, Rukma.
A very good morning to you, Anil, and to all our viewers as well. And as Anil just said, it's a power-packed news hour ahead as we take stock of the turmoil in Afghanistan, all the updates thereof as the entire world looks on at the latest turn of events in the war-torn country. Also news of all the latest COVID updates, other news from across the world, but majorly focusing on Afghanistan. So let's begin with the headlines.
Ministry of External Affairs says it is continuously monitoring the situation in Kabul. Discussions on with partners in connection with repatriation if Indians. Special Afghanistan cell set up coordinate repatriation and other requests from Afghanistan.
External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar discusses latest developments in Afghanistan with US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, underlines urgency of restoring airport operations in Kabul. Says he deeply appreciates American efforts underway in this regard.
United Nations Security Council holds its second meeting on Afghanistan in 10 days. UN chief's message of restraint to Taliban with a reminder to the world. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar reaches New York to discuss Afghanistan crisis during his engagements at the United Nations.
US President Joe Biden breaks silence on Afghanistan, says national security team, and he himself closely monitoring the situation on the ground, asserts the mission in Afghanistan was never about nation building, but to prevent terrorist attacks on American soil.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi to interact with Indian para-athlete contingent for Tokyo 2020 via video conferencing. India sending biggest ever contingent to Paralympic Games of 54 para-athletes from across 9 sports disciplines. Sports Minister Anurag Thakur to attend.
India registers sensational victory against England, win second test at Lord's by 151 runs. Mohammad Shami, Jasprit Bumrah and Mohammad Siraj set up historic win for India. Take 1-0 series lead.
Well, those were the headlines at the top of this hour. Now for the stories in detail, starting first up with the turmoil in Afghanistan. And External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has informed that India is continuously monitoring the situation in Kabul. In a series of tweets, he said that India understands the anxiety of those seeking to return to India. Airport operations are the main challenge. Discussions on with partners in that regard. Further, given the Kabul situation, it is important that the ministry has accurate information about Indians there. Thus, Dr. Jaishankar urged that this be provided by all concerned to the MEA Special Afghanistan cell on the phone number 91971 77 85379. I'll repeat the number 971 77 85379. You can also drop an email to MEA Helpdesk India at the helpdeskindia@gmail.com. MEA Helpdesk India @gmail.com. He added that India is in constant touch with the Sikh and Hindu community leaders in Kabul and their welfare will get our priority attention. External Affairs Minister also talked about the significant UN Security Council discussions held yesterday on the developments in Afghanistan. While expressing concerns of the international community, he said he expects to discuss these issues during his engagements at the UN. The minister also informed regarding his discussion over the latest development in Afghanistan with the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken. He said that both the leaders underlined the urgency of restoring airport operations in Kabul and also deeply appreciated the American efforts underway in this regard.
And the United Nations Security Council held its second meeting on Afghanistan in 10 days as the country witnessed chaotic scenes over the weekend with the Taliban taking over Kabul. Making his inaugural remarks, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that the world is following the developments in Afghanistan with a heavy heart and urged the Taliban to exercise restraint and ensure that humanitarian needs are met.
The world is following events in Afghanistan with a heavy heart and deep disquiet about what lies ahead. All of us have seen the images in real time: chaos, unrest, uncertainty, and fear. Much lies in the balance. I urge all parties, especially the Taliban, to exercise utmost restraint to protect lives and to ensure that humanitarian needs can be met. And I call on all parties to provide humanitarians with unimpeded access to deliver timely and life-saving services and aid. And I also urge all countries to be willing to receive Afghan refugees and refrain from any deportations.
Further, the UN Secretary General urged the nations to stand as one to uphold human rights in Afghanistan.
The international community must be united and utilize all available instruments to ensure the following. First, speak with one voice to uphold human rights in Afghanistan. I call upon the Taliban and all parties to respect and protect international humanitarian law and the rights and freedoms of all persons. We are receiving chilling reports of severe restrictions on human rights throughout the country. And I am particularly concerned by accounts of mounting human rights violations against the women and girls of Afghanistan who fear a return to the darkest days. It is essential that the hard-won rights of Afghan women and girls are protected.
And most importantly, UN Secretary General called upon all nations to ensure that Afghanistan is never again used as a safe haven for terrorist organizations.
The international community must unite to make sure that Afghanistan is never again used as a platform or safe haven for terrorist organizations. I appeal to the Security Council and the international community as a whole to stand together, to work together and act together, and use all tools at its disposal to suppress the global terrorist threat in Afghanistan and to guarantee that basic human rights will be respected.
And Afghanistan's representative urged the UN Security Council to call upon the Taliban to cease target killings and open international borders. He said that target killings have started again in the landlocked nation.
The Security Council and the UN Secretary General should use every means at its disposal to call for an immediate cessation of violence and respect for human rights and international humanitarian law. Call on the Taliban to fully respect the general amnesty offered by them, cease target killing and revenge attacks, and abide by international humanitarian laws. Urge that no public institutions and service delivery infrastructure be demolished, including works of arts in museums and media institutions. Stress that anyone violating human rights of Afghan citizens and international humanitarian law will be held accountable. Urgently establish a humanitarian corridor for the evacuation of those at risk of Taliban retributions and attacks. Call on neighboring countries of Afghanistan to open their borders and facilitate exit of people trying to escape and entry of goods for humanitarian relief and operations. Call for the immediate establishment of an inclusive and representative transitional government that includes all ethnic groups and women representatives, which can lead to a dignified and lasting solution to the conflict, bring peace, and preserve the gains of the last 20 years, especially for women and girls.
And Afghanistan's representative also said that the Taliban is not honoring its commitments made during the Doha talks.
We are extremely concerned about Taliban's not honoring their promises and commitments made in their statements at Doha and at other international fora. We've witnessed time and again how Taliban have broken their promises and commitments in the past. We have seen gruesome images of Taliban's mass executions of military personnel and target killings of civilians in Kandahar and other big cities. Mr. President, we cannot allow this to happen in Kabul, which has been the last refuge for many people escaping violence and Taliban's revenge attacks.
Well, India's permanent representative to the UN, T.S. Tirumurthy, highlighted that as a neighbor of Afghanistan, as a friend of its people, the current situation prevailing in the country is of great concern to us in India. He said that Afghan men and women, along with children, are living under a constant state of fear.
In this short period of time, we have witnessed dramatic changes in the situation. We have also seen very unfortunate scenes at the Hamid Karzai International Airport in Kabul. There is widespread panic among the people. Women and children are in distress. Incidents of firing have been reported from the city, including at the airport. While the security situation remains precarious, a grave humanitarian crisis is unfolding.
While he further said that it is time to contain the crisis and establish stability in Afghanistan.
It is time for the international community, in particular this Council, to act and ensure an immediate cessation of violence and contain any possible crisis and mitigate its consequences. Afghanistan has already seen enough bloodshed in the past. It is time for the international community to come together unitedly, rising above any partisan interests, to support the people of Afghanistan in their desire for peace, stability and security in the country, and to enable all Afghans, including women, children and minorities, to live in peace and dignity.
Meanwhile, capital Kabul continues to witness chaos as civilians try to flee the country, fearing that the Taliban would take the nation back to how it was between 1996 and 2001, when the terror group ruled the country. Thousands desperate to flee Afghanistan thronged Kabul airport's single runway on Monday. Some clung to a US military transport plane as it taxied on the runway. The Taliban have projected a moderate face where they say that women's rights will be respected. But residents of Kabul are apprehensive and continued to crowd the Kabul airport in a last-ditch attempt to escape the war-torn nation, which fell to the Mujahideen in a matter of just a few days.
While US President Joe Biden has strongly defended his decision to pull out troops from Afghanistan, Biden said the mission of the United States was never supposed to be nation building, as he blamed the Taliban's takeover of the country on the unwillingness of the Afghan army to fight the militant group. Striking a defiant note, Biden said he stands squarely behind his decision to withdraw US troops from Afghanistan. He stressed that the mission in Afghanistan was solely for preventing terrorist attack on American soil.
I stand squarely behind my decision. After 20 years, I've learned the hard way that there was never a good time to withdraw US forces. That's why we're still there. We were clear-eyed about the risk. We planned for every contingency, but I always promised the American people that I will be straight with you. The truth is, this did unfold more quickly than we had anticipated. So what's happened? Afghanistan political leaders gave up and fled the country. The Afghan military collapsed, sometime without trying to fight. If anything, the developments of the past week reinforced that ending U.S. military involvement in Afghanistan now was the right decision. American troops cannot and should not be fighting in a war and dying in a war that Afghan forces are not willing to fight for themselves.
The US President pledged that the US will continue to support the Afghan people, push for regional diplomacy, and speak out for the rights of Afghans.
We will continue to support the Afghan people. We will lead with our diplomacy, our international influence, and our humanitarian aid. We'll continue to push for regional diplomacy and engagement to prevent violence and instability. We'll continue to speak out for the basic rights of the Afghan people, of women and girls, just as we speak out all over the world.
Biden warned the Taliban of swift and forceful response from the US if they attack American personnel or disrupt their operations in Afghanistan.
To carry out this departure, we have made it clear to the Taliban, if they attack our personnel or disrupt our operation, the US presence will be swift and the response will be swift and forceful. We will defend our people with devastating force if necessary.
Meanwhile, the US State Department has declined to say if the United States still recognize Ashraf Ghani as the president of Afghanistan after he left the country on Sunday as insurgent Taliban fighters toppled his government.
This is something that we are working again with the international community. You saw in this statement from the UN a clear consensus emerge that a political settlement will be in everyone's interest, that a political settlement will be best positioned to achieve what it is manifestly in our collective interests. And by our, I mean the United States, I mean that of our allies and partners, but also importantly, probably most importantly, the interests of the people of Afghanistan. A political settlement is what we are still pushing for.
Well, French President Emmanuel Macron meanwhile said that France and Germany will push for a European plan to tackle migration flows from Afghanistan as people flee the Taliban's control. Macron's announcement on migration comes amid mixed messages from EU capitals on Europe's willingness to help Afghans desperate to flee the Taliban takeover of their country. The French president also called on the United Nations to tackle the Afghan crisis and announced that common initiatives will be adopted in the coming hours. Earlier in the day, Macron spoke with German Chancellor Angela Merkel and British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, as well as attending a meeting with his own ministers.
And German Chancellor Angela Merkel also expressed concern about the quickly deteriorating situation in Afghanistan after the Taliban seized control. The German Chancellor said the developments in Afghanistan are bitter, dramatic and terrible. Merkel said efforts would be made to offer support and refuge, particularly for Afghan support staff who had helped the German military. She said that she was in intensive discussions with French President Emmanuel Macron on the evacuation of people and follow-up developments.
Meanwhile, UK has warned the Taliban it will be held to account if it does not protect human rights in Afghanistan after overthrowing the country's government. British Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said that Britain will use all its means it has at its disposal to hold the Taliban to account in Afghanistan.
We're using our G7 presidency to make very clear to the Taliban that we will hold them to account for their commitment and never to allow Afghanistan to be used as a base for terror, to hold a more inclusive government and to protect the most essential human rights, including respecting the rights of women.
Nobel Peace Prize winner Malala Yousafzai said US President Joe Biden must take a bold step to protect the Afghan people. In an exclusive interview to BBC on the plight of Afghanistan, Yousafzai also requested world leaders to open their borders to Afghan refugees and displaced people.
I am deeply concerned about the situation in Afghanistan right now, especially about the safety of women and girls there. This is actually an urgent humanitarian crisis right now that we need to provide our help and support. We cannot just look at our screens and not do anything and just get into the politics of what should have happened, what shouldn't have happened. I have been trying to reach out to many global leaders. I think every country has a role and responsibility right now. Countries need to open their borders to Afghan refugees, to the displaced people.
Turkey, meanwhile, evacuated over 300 people from Kabul on a Turkish Airlines flight after the Taliban seized control of the Afghan capital. The Turkish nationals were brought to Istanbul airport with a Turkish Airlines plane under the coordination of the Turkish Foreign Ministry. Speaking to reporters on arrival at Istanbul, passengers said they had to wait up to 3 hours on the plane while troops cleared the runway of civilians.
And in the chaos and uncertainty of the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan, Afghan legislator Farzana Kuchai says she fears for her life first and her freedom next, but that Afghans will not tolerate a return to the harshest forms of Islamist rule that once prevailed. Blindsided by the speed of events, the 29-year-old, who was born in the northern province of Baghlan and has represented nomadic Afghans for more than 2 years, fires off the questions churning in her mind. Like other Afghans, she is laying low at home with no idea how the situation will pan out for elected representatives such as her or anyone else. Kochai said the generation that has grown up since 2001 would no longer tolerate hardline rule.
Meanwhile, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar reached New York today. External Affairs Minister will chair two high-level meetings of the UN Security Council on UN peacekeeping and on terrorism on August 18th and 19th. The first event on August 18th will be an open debate on protecting the protectors, technology and peacekeeping, while the second event on August 19th will be a high-level briefing on threats to international peace and security caused by terrorist acts. Both these topics are priorities for UN during its UNSC innings. The aim is to improve camp security for UN peacekeepers, the overall security situation and the quality of situational awareness. An MOU between the Government of India and the UN in support to the Partnership for Technology in Peacekeeping initiative is expected to be signed during the visit. He will also participate in a ceremony at UN Peacekeeping Memorial along with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. On August 19th, External Affairs Minister will preside over a briefing session on the 6-month report of the UN Secretary General under the agenda item Threats to International Peace and Security Caused by Terrorist Act. During this visit, External Affairs Minister would also have bilateral meetings with foreign ministers of other member states on the sidelines of these UNSC high-level events.
And joining us now is our correspondent AMRITPAL Singh. A very good morning to you, AMRITPAL. Well, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres could not have said it better when he described the Afghanistan situation. The world watches Afghanistan with a heavy heart, he said. The images are there for all to see. What about the latest situation, AMRITPAL? What details do you have?
Well, the latest situation, Rukma, remains quite similar to the images that came out of Afghanistan yesterday. Because no interim administration or government has been announced, so there is a lot of chaos and confusion on who's in charge. And because if there is the Ashraf Ghani-led administration and government has totally collapsed after his exit from the country, the Taliban haven't announced a new government. So basically, most authorities do not know who is in command, and people are at many places not reporting to work. For example, the air operations yesterday. One of the reasons for collapse of the air operations at the Kabul airport was that nobody knows that who's in charge. So people are not reporting to work. They are worried about their safety. The Taliban moving around. So you need air traffic controllers to run the show. So slowly the Americans have to take the airport in their control, and so that evacuations could happen. There were American planes and other commercial flights parked parked in hangars at the Kabul International Airport, but they could not fly because they did not know, and there was no security, they did not know. A lot of people just barged in, there was no immigration happening. So things like that, and that's the situation with most departments or organs of governance. Now, unless that happens, law and order gets restored, authorities take charge, chaos is bound to prevail. And but thankfully, what is happening right now is that the shops are open, food shortages as of now are not happening, but as people may start stocking up, so that could start soon. That's evolving there. The situation indeed is quite grim there.
Okay.
Rukman.
Amrit, looking at the way American president looked defined, especially in that moment, he said he stands squarely behind the decision. Let bygones be bygones. Now, what happens to the situation there? It looks almost like quicksand in Afghanistan. Now, who is likely to step in, to contain this mess?
Nobody knows, Anil. Nobody knows how the cookie will crumble. There are efforts on to form, representative and inclusive of and brought in through political negotiations. Leaders are Abdullah, Hamid Karzai, Guruddin Hikmatyar are reaching Doha. The Taliban also has some of its negotiators in Doha. So international powers, the West, the United States, Russia, China, even India, Pakistan are pushing the concerned to happen. But there are differences of views on power sharing, so that could take a days at least. So, given in the meanwhile, as I said, chaos continues to prevail, and there is utter confusion on. And to yesterday, Mullah Baradar came on television and tried to assure the Afghans that they need not be scared, and they will take charge and they will take care of the Afghans. But it's not really cutting much ice, because given how the Taliban ran the governance in 1996, it doesn't inspire much confidence in the Afghans. So it is indeed a very difficult situation, and because there is no clarity on what the political future would be, so that adds to the confusion and the chaos.
Also considering the fact that, the Biden administration made it clear, it's not as if, one fine day they decided that they're going to, pull out everybody from Kabul or Afghanistan in particular. Do you somewhere feel that, maybe a body like UN could have stepped in, could have sent, troops there, a combined team that could have come there, peacekeeping force that could have come and managed that hand-holding process, that suddenly snapped and the Taliban has taken control?
Well, these are speculations, and there is no end to that. Would the Taliban have allowed the UN peacekeeping forces to land there? If they had landed, would they have been effective? If it goes into a civil war?
Right, Amritpal, very quickly, what about Indians there? The External Affairs Ministry has assured all help. So, is there likely to be any solution to the crisis that perhaps our own citizens could be facing at this point?
Very quickly, if I may be allowed to complete my last point.
Right.
So, Anil, these are suggestions that sort of one can think in hindsight. The fact of the matter is, Afghans finally have to take responsibility of running their own nation. And as Joe Biden said, they had to go sooner or later, and there was never a good time to decide when to go. So, one day the Americans had to go. So the Afghans, so a certain power vacuum would in any case would have been created. Then yes, there is a critique that the Americans could have prepared the ground better. But, these are, again, when is the best time to go is a matter of standpoints and viewpoints. Anyway, coming to your question.
Well, many thanks to
right
you.
Now, the repatriation and evacuation of Indians is the matter of utmost concern, apart from the evolving humanitarian situation there. So the government, as things open up now, I hear there are reports that military planes have started taking off, and Americans, once now they've taken control. In days to come, if commercial flights start operating, India is also looking. There are military planes put on standby, though the MEA doesn't want to share operational details with us reporters at the moment. There are some sort of efforts on to repatriate the Indians who are stuck there in Afghanistan, including our diplomatic staff.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you and appreciate you joining us this morning, giving us an insight, especially into the grim situation there in Afghanistan. Well, let's now shift focus and move back to India, where the Union Health Minister Mansukh Mandavia on Monday held a meeting with the Kerala government to review the COVID scenario in the southern state. The Union Minister is accompanied by Union Health Secretary Rajesh Bhushan. From state government side, Chief Minister along with State Health Minister and Health Department's top officials briefed on the steps taken by the state in containing the COVID-19 spread in the state. The central government has allocated 267.35 crore rupees to Kerala under the Emergency COVID Response Package 2. It will strengthen the state's health infrastructure and effectively manage COVID-19. Additionally, 1 crore will be made available to each district of Kerala for creating medicine pool. Union Health Minister will visit Assam today.
Meanwhile, in Maharashtra, malls are set to open every day till 10 p.m. as part of the break the chain measures to restore public life after COVID cases have finally been brought under control. As per a new order, only those who have been fully vaccinated and have completed 14 days since will be allowed inside malls, which includes visitors as well as employees. Those below the age of 18 will be required to carry identity cards, including Aadhaar for age proof, as the age group is not vaccinated as yet. Also, all parks, grounds, sea faces and beaches in the Mumbai municipal area will remain open to the public from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. BMC Commissioner Iqbal Singh Chahal has appealed to the people to cooperate by following COVID appropriate behavior and all the necessary instructions while in public places. 860 parks, 318 grounds, sea faces and beaches in Mumbai will now be open from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. and will be important to maintain social distancing at public places and avoid crowding, as wearing of masks will be compulsory and violators could face legal action.
Well, for more on the story, we've got Sharma joining us from Mumbai. Sharma, good morning. Sharma, give us a sense exactly when it comes to, the city of Mumbai in particular. A lot of restrictions or a lot of curbs being removed. Are people now ready to follow those, those restrictions that are still in place, while things open up in the city?
Tricky question, and to the answer, people when they know the numbers of cases. That now the cases have come down.
Okay.
People.
Well, I believe.
Well, Sharma there, our correspondent, trying to connect. Sharma, if you could you hear us? We would like to know about how Mumbaikars are, willing to respond to the new order, the latest order, even as Mumbai is all set to reopen further, with malls setting to be open till 10 p.m. What other restrictions are in place? What is the situation like right now?
We are talking only about the then we are seeing in Mumbai that the malls, everywhere the malls have been allowed to open up. And but the rider over here is this, that everyone entering that mall, entering any mall, should be fully vaccinated and should have also completed 14 days after the second dose of their vaccination. So the people who are coming as visitors, the employees, workers, everyone who's getting into the mall will be checked with their certificates. Apart from that, because the age group of 18 and below, they are not vaccinated yet, so they would be allowed only with their identification where the age has been mentioned. So children below the age of 18 can enter the mall, but with identification cards. Apart from that, we are also seeing these areas where people come for jogging, running, physical activity. So grounds, parks, beaches, sea faces, that have also been allowed to open up from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. and people will have to wear a mask and maintain social distancing. Once again, the Chief Minister has said that, if any place is seen with all crowding happening, mega crowding happening over there, then once again the restrictions would be put in place. And apart from that, if the number of cases start to rise, the lockdown is inevitable. The third lockdown would be inevitable. He has also already mentioned that. Coming back to the number of cases that have been, coming down in Maharashtra, we have seen that yesterday close to, more than a little of 4,000 cases have been already reported yesterday. But more than that, more than 5,000 people have been discharged yesterday. Okay. So the number is good over here. Okay. Apart from that, the one major concern that government has, the of fatalities happening every day. So yesterday, see, 100 people have lost their lives.
Okay, so clearly the battle against COVID-19 continues in the western state of Maharashtra as things get under control and curbs being lifted there for people to visit malls and other places.
And moving on now, India's glorious fight for freedom is one of the greatest struggles the modern world has seen. DD News brings you a glimpse of the valiant struggle every day. In today's episode, we give you a brief story about Madan Lal Dhingra. Today is the martyrdom day of Madan Lal Dhingra. Take a look at this tribute.
The wave of independence movement had started initially as a protest against the partition of Bengal, and it gradually grew into a demand for complete freedom. Indians realized the fact that a group of foreigners who came to our shores as traders had cleverly divided the people and started ruling them. The wealth of this vast land was systematically looted by them. The very same people who depended on us for their trade started crushing our cottage and village industries, treating the people of the soil as slaves. This naturally needed an equal and proportionate reply. The people revolted against the oppressors, and the country began witnessing sporadic protests. Cruel treatment to the freedom fighters, legendary heroes by the British, agitated youth, and one of such young freedom activists was Madan Lal Dhingra.
Madan Lal Dhingra was born on 18th of September 1883 in Amritsar, Punjab. He went to Lahore in 1900 to study at the Government College University. There he was influenced by the nationalist movement, which at that time was about seeking home rule. Dhingra was specially troubled by the poverty of India. He studied the literature concerning the causes of Indian poverty and felt that the solution to these problems lay in Swaraj and Swadeshi. In 1904, Dhingra led a student protest against the principal's order to have the college blazer made of cloth imported from Britain. He was expelled from the college for this. In general, the incidence of revolutionary nationalism was on the rise during those days. This incident brought Dhingra closer to the revolutionary nationalism.
In 1905, Dhingra went to London and stayed in India House. India House was a student residence located in North London. With the patronage of lawyer Shyamji Krishna Verma, it was open to promote nationalist views among Indian students in Britain. It was in India House that Madan Lal Dhingra met V.D. Savarkar, who was then the manager of India House.
Meanwhile, on 8th of June 1909, Baba Rao Ganesh Savarkar, elder brother of Veer Savarkar, was sentenced to transportation for life. This deportation of Baba Rao Savarkar enraged the revolutionaries in London. William Hutt Curzon Wiley was the head of the secret police then and had been trying to obtain information about Savarkar and other revolutionaries. It was because of Curzon Wiley that the revolutionary freedom fighters in London were being targeted. The journal of Shyamji Krishnavarma, named The Indian Sociologist, described Wiley as old repentant foe of India who has fattened on the misery of the Indian peasant ever since they began their career. The resentment was such among the revolutionaries that somehow forced Dhingra to take an extreme step.
On 1st July 1909, Dhingra attended a gathering hosted by the National Indian Association at the Imperial Institute. William Hutt Curzon Willie, the British officer, was also present in the meeting. At the end of the event, as the guests were leaving, Dhingra shot Curzon Willie at point-blank range.
Dhingra was immediately arrested. At his trial, he represented himself, though he did not recognize the legitimacy of the court. He claimed that the gunning down of Curzon Wiley was a patriotic act and in retaliation for the inhuman killings of Indians by the British government in India. He was found guilty and sentenced to death. He was executed at Pentonville Prison on 17th of August 1909.
Young Madanlal Dhingra had comfortable and promising start to life. His English education assured him that, but that wasn't to be. He preferred to avenge injustice done to his countrymen. He knew it very well that avenging would entail untold misery for him, yet he took the plunge. Such was the determination of young Dhingra, and this and many more such sacrifices paved the way for a freedom that was to come many decades later.
And what a coincidence it was that in 1947, the withdrawal of British forces started from 17th of August. On 17th of August, the first major unit made its exit from the former colony. A large contingent of the Royal Air Force sailed from Bombay to, as it was then known, back Great Britain. Of course, the total withdrawal of all British troops took time. It wasn't until February 1948 that the final departures took place.
British withdrawal signaled the end of the colonial Indian Army. Historians are predominantly in agreement that Lord Mountbatten's haste in withdrawing the British forces from India and essentially split the country.
Well, news just coming in. Ministry of Home Affairs has reviews the visa provisions in view of the current situation there in Afghanistan. The ministry in a tweet said a new category of electronic visa called E-Emergency X-Miss Visa introduced to fast-track visa applications for entry into India.
And time now for some sports news in our next segment, Sports Track.
But Prime Minister Narendra Modi will interact with the Indian para-athlete contingent for Tokyo 2020 Paralympic Games today via video conferencing. 54 para-athletes from across 9 sports disciplines will be heading to Tokyo to represent the nation. This is India's biggest ever contingent to the Paralympic Games. Union Sports Minister will also be present during the interaction.
After India's spectacular performance at Tokyo Olympics 2020, all eyes are now on the upcoming Tokyo Paralympic Games, which will be held in Tokyo from 24th of August to 5th of September. Ahead of the Tokyo Paralympic Games 2020, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be interacting one-on-one with Indian para-athletes contingent for Tokyo Paralympic Games on 17th of August, that is Tuesday, via video conferencing. The interaction will take place at 1100 hours Indian Standard Time. To boost the morale of the Indian para-athletes, an official send-off ceremony was earlier organized in the national capital on Thursday, where MOS EAM Meenakshi Lekhi, Union Culture Minister G. Kishan Reddy and President of Paralympic Committee of India Deepa Malik also took part. 54 para-athletes from across 9 sports disciplines will be heading to Tokyo to represent the nation, making it to India's biggest ever contingent for the Paralympic Games. Union Sports Minister Anurag Singh Thakur will also be present during the interaction between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Indian para-athletes. 2016 Rio Paralympics gold medalist Mariyappan Thanguvelu has been selected as the country's flag bearer in the opening ceremony. The Indian contingent will also feature 2-time Paralympics gold medalist Devendra Jajaria in javelin, among others who will be participating in the upcoming games. Sports Desk, Daily India.
And joining us now is our correspondent Arun Sharma to tell us more about the interaction that is to take place today. Well, Arun, after that wonderful showing at the Tokyo Olympics, it's now the turn of our para athletes. We believe the mood is upbeat after, what our athletes achieved the first time round. Also, many hopefuls in this contingent as well.
Absolutely, a lot of hopes, as far as Paralympic games are concerned. And we know this fact that Indian Paralympic team has now 54 members. So just like Olympic team, this is also you can say the largest ever contingent from Paralympic side as well. Now there are a lot of expectations from players like Devendra Jajaria, the javelin player, because he also won gold in 2004 and 2016 as well. Now Sandeep Chaudhary, another javelin champion, a lot of expectations from him as well. Now high jumper Mariyappan Thangavelu, now he will also be part of the team. So I mean there are a lot of expectations from these players, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, when he interacts with these players primarily, the focus will be to motivate them and of course inspire them. And yesterday also when Prime Minister Narendra Modi interacted with the Olympic contingent, his message was very much clear that primarily the focus should not be on winning, and you should not be disheartened as far as if in case you lose. The focus should be to showcase a sportsmanship spirit. The focus should be on this international platform is to perform the game primarily, to play a fantastic game and to give you 100%. So Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to interact with these Paralympic players, and yes, the kind of performance that we have seen in Tokyo so far as far as Olympic contingent is concerned, the morale is really high of the Paralympic team as well. And in that context, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi interacts with these players, the focus will be really on motivating them and inspiring them just ahead of the Paralympic event.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you and appreciate you joining us this morning on Breakfast News. Well, moving forward to Test cricket, and India registering a historic win there. India won the second Test against England at Lord's, and in the end it turned out to be a clinical win. Right from the batsmen to the bowlers, everyone contributed in the 151-run win to help India go 1-0 up in the series. But the heroes of the win were certainly Jasprit Bumrah and Mohammad Shami, who not only picked wickets but also strung a crucial partnership of 89 that put India on the top. Shami had reached 56 unbeaten and Bumrah unbeaten on 34 when India declared on 298 for 8, setting England an unlikely 272 to win in a little over 60 overs or to survive. England started the second innings on a poor note and lost wickets at regular intervals before Mohammad Siraj picked up the last wicket as India take a 1-0 lead in the 5-match series. But for more on the story, we've got Narayan Singh standing by to give us the latest. Narayan, not many expected this particular win to come on the 5th day, especially the way this particular test was swinging, England getting a first innings lead. What was the turnaround, or how did the turnaround come about on that 5th day? Well, I believe there is some issue with regards to connectivity. Let's now move on to our next segment where we get you the daily health tip in this segment.
Malaria, as you know, is a mosquito-borne illness. But what are its symptoms? What are the ways to prevent mosquito breeding? We tell you more in this report by Kiran Bharadwaj.
Malaria is an acute febrile illness. It is caused by parasites that are transmitted through the bites of infected female Anopheles mosquito. Symptoms usually appear 10 to 15 days after infected mosquito bite. Initial symptoms may be mild and difficult to recognize. If not treated within 24 hours, P. falciparum malaria can progress to severe illness.
The signs and symptoms of malaria are headache, high-grade fever with chills, body ache, nausea, vomiting, abdominal cramps. Malaria is very simple to diagnose with the simple blood smear test, which can be repeated many times to ensure that malarial parasite is there. Besides that, there are rapid diagnostic kits, and the The treatment of malaria should be started within 24 hours to prevent the complications and fatality.
Children with severe malaria frequently develop one or more severe symptoms like severe anemia, respiratory distress, or cerebral malaria. In adults, multi-organ failure may occur in case of severity.
You should prevent the mosquito breeding to ensure that there is no collection of stagnant water within your houses, within our surroundings, within our colonies, within our city. Cleanliness is most important. Second is prevent the mosquito biting, and that can be done in the way of wearing the full sleeves clothing, using the mosquito repellent creams and oils, and you can use the vaporizers. There are different ways to ensure that you have a wire mesh on your windows and doors and they are closed in the evening, because mosquito tends to enter your houses in the evening. And we should always encourage the indoor residual spray along with the use of the medicated mosquito nets.
Early diagnosis and treatment of malaria reduces disease and prevents deaths. It also contributes to reducing malaria transmission. Vector control is the main way to prevent and reduce transmission of malaria. Kiran Bhardwaj, DD News.
An official spokesperson in news just coming in, Ministry of External Affairs Arindam Bagchi has tweeted that in view of the prevailing circumstances, it has been decided that our ambassador in Kabul and his Indian staff will move to India immediately. Telling us more about this is our correspondent AMRITPAL SINGH. AMRITPAL, it's over to you now. We are getting this tweet now. Arindam Bagchi has tweeted about the return of the entire staff of the Indian ambassador and the rest of his staff as well. It's over to you for more details. AMRITPAL,
can you hear me, Rukma?
Yes, go ahead, Amrit.
I was saying the spokesperson of the Ministry of External Affairs has just tweeted that in view of the prevailing circumstances, it has been decided that our ambassador in Kabul and his Indian staff will move to India immediately. If my understanding is correct, India is shutting down its embassy in Kabul, and so that that's a big step. More details will emerge in the day. But for the moment, given the precarious security situation, it has been decided to move the ambassador and the diplomatic staff of India at the embassy in Kabul back to India. So the embassy, I would understand, will not be functional because of the prevailing chaotic situation there. Indians are also being repatriated to India. So that is a big announcement given the security situation that prevails in Kabul. As you know, the diplomatic staff and other personnel at all the other 4 consulates, Indian consulates in Afghanistan, had already been pulled back earlier. So now with our diplomatic staff and the ambassador being pulled out of Afghanistan, given the security situation, that means India's diplomatic services in Kabul will be temporarily halted.
Amrit, the government has promised that, promised all help, especially to Indians stranded in Afghanistan. Now, the sense that you pick up, especially when it comes to the embassy in Kabul, with the ambassador and his staff being pulled out, purely in terms of making an exit, how do, especially those stranded, what are the options available for them?
Right now, there are no commercial flights. Whatever Indians had got in touch with the Indian embassy, there were numbers put out. A lot of Indians had gotten in touch with the Indians. They will be evacuated through military planes that will be sent. And also yesterday, it was made clear by the Indian embassy and reiterated by the foreign minister, that External Affairs Minister, that Hindu and Sikh Afghans who wish to be repatriated to India can get in touch with the embassy to see, given the developments now, how further that goes. already gotten in touch and were in and around the embassy will be evacuated on military planes. Commercial planes are stopped as of now, but given the prevailing security situation there, it had become, impediment on India to pull its diplomatic staff out.
Okay. Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you and appreciate you joining us once again on Breakfast News.
And it's time now to take a look at temperatures in towns and cities across India.
Well, that's it in this edition of Breakfast News. Remember that battle against COVID-19 continues. Follow those simple steps of SMS. Sanitize yourself, mask yourself and maintaining social distancing at all times. Also, remember to get yourself vaccinated. Remember, many places are opening up, many states are opening up, but you need to get yourself vaccinated. And when you go to get yourself vaccinated, please get one of your loved ones, one of your friends along with you, so that more and more people get vaccinated.
And well, those visuals are there for you to see. As always, we leave you with something to cheer you up as you begin your day. These are visuals of the 60th Hookah Brass Band Festival, recently held in a small town of Serbia. So enjoy the music. Namaskar.